Hello, and welcome to another station identification. Happy 2026. I have been waiting since the early time in December for the announcement by the Library of Congress about the National Film Registry. And as of yesterday, January 29th, the National Film Registry has named their 2025 class. And I've said this before, that it's one of my favorite things. It's a silly little thing, but I really like it. And as I said, I've been waiting since early December. It usually comes out in December. And when it didn't, I emailed the Library of Congress and got a reply fairly quick, and was told that there had been some delays and that they would be announced on January 29th. And then they were going to be doing some things after that point. I believe there's going to be something on Turner Classic Movies about this year's class and such. And I think there was a YouTube announcement and such. And after I drank my morning cup of pour-over coffee, Cafe del Sol from Cafe Vita, so good, I opened the list and looked it over and saw some things I recognized. And the first thing that really struck me as I looked at the list was that 6 of the 25 films this year were from the silent era. And that there were 4 documentaries, both of which I feel are very good things. And the only thing that would have made it even better would have been maybe a couple shorts or maybe an avant-garde film or something, one of those things that some art professor does, on the side. And, those are just, really cool to learn about. And shorts from mid-century, the classic cartoons or something like Tex Avery or something, that would have been cool. But none of that this year. This year, 6 silents and 4 documentaries, and then 15 others. Now, of the silents, I wasn't familiar with any of them, so I had to look them up. The earliest film this time around was from 1896, an early comedy called The Tramp and the Dog. And this is the earliest example of some physical comedy tropes that would show up in other films later. And physical comedy would dominate the art form from the beginning because they were trying to get people to be excited about watching film, and making them laugh is a good way to do that. And this film was full of slapstick gags. Slapstick gags are just part and parcel of early filmmaking. Things involving tramps and dogs, pies, and losing your pants. People getting their pants pulled down or something. Comedy gold from, before the last century. So, funny then, funny now. Well, funny to other people. Have it happen to you. Not so funny. The others of the silents were notable because of who made them. Oath of the Sword was an early film made by Asian Americans. Maid of Macmillan was created by young filmmakers and essentially is thought of as the first student film before that it was even a thing. The others are Lady and then Sparrows, and these two illustrate performances by two powerhouse female leads, Norma Talmadge and Mary Pickford, respectively. Mary Pickford, obviously, being one of the giants of the early silent era, one of the original people behind the Studio United artists. The last one was called 10 Nights in a Barroom, and it was created by an all-black cast at a time when opportunities for African Americans in filmmaking was very difficult. The documentaries on this year's list, the first listed was the very first film by the influential historian, documentarian Ken Burns. His film, The Brooklyn Bridge, that began all of that film's success, laid the groundwork for everything else that Ken Burns has done. Up until recently, he even did something on the American Revolution. He's been, making films since that point. The second documentary is called Say Amen Somebody, and it was all about gospel music, and it was made in 1982. The third documentary is The Wrecking Crew from 2008. This film is fantastic. It's one of my favorite. I have it in my collection. It is about the musical talents of this legendary session musician group from Los Angeles during the 1960s, colloquially known as the Wrecking Crew. And they appeared on countless albums and helped bring numerous famous songs to life. The last documentary is called The Loving Story, and it is a historical documentary that tells the story of Richard and Mildred Loving. They had a mixed race marriage back when things like that were illegal. And the lawsuits that arose from that made it to the Supreme Court, changed the law, made it so that mixed race marriages were not something that could be argued against. So, fantastic class of documentaries this time through. That leaves 15 feature films. There are two musicals that come from the 1950s. Both, however, starred Bing Crosby, of all people. The first being White Christmas, uses the Irving Berlin song of the same name. Although that song was first used in an earlier film, which I always get confused with White Christmas, called Holiday Inn. Holiday Inn was a black and white. White Christmas was in color. One of those put on a show kind of musical. It's White Christmas is known as also one of the first films to use Paramount's innovative VistaVision process. VistaVision was an amazing process, it ran the film through the camera on its side so that more of an image could be stored on the film. It made for amazing viewing, especially when films went large with CinemaScope. It's as a process became very well used by special effects people, notably Star Wars, because they would gain so much information when you shot with it. The second film is a remake of the Philadelphia Story, classic film that starred Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart, and Katharine Hepburn. The remake is known as High Society, and it was a musical using the same story as the Philadelphia Story, and it used the songs of Cole Porter. It is often thought of as the last great major studio musical, and it featured Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Grace Kelly, and this is her last role before she went off and married Prince Rainier of Monaco and gave up acting. And finally, also Louis Armstrong featured in the film. Then we jump forward in time. The next films on the list, there are 4 films representing the 1980s. The first is John Carpenter's remake of the 50s era The Thing from Another World. And the name was shortened to just The Thing. And it was released in 1982, starring Kurt Russell. Landmark special effects, claustrophobia based on the setting of the Antarctic research base. And that highlight is the highlight of this body horror film. 1982 is when this came out, and that was a wrecking crew, use the term from the other film, of a year regarding science fiction. The films that came out that year were outstanding. Blade Runner, Star Trek Wrath of Khan, for just a couple that came out that year beyond The Thing. The next film is The Big Chill, which is the essential baby boomer film, showing the lives of college friends getting together upon the suicide of one of their old friends. The cast has some of the best actors of that generation, including Kevin Kline, Glenn Close, and William Hurt. Just fantastic group of actors telling a story of their lives and where they had gone since college. There's also the kid sports film of The Karate Kid, which introduced the character of Mr. Miyagi, and, wax on and wax off. The final of the 1980s films is Glory, which tells the story of African American soldiers during the Civil War. And it was also the film that earned Denzel Washington his first Oscar. Excuse me. 4 more films come from the 1990s. One of them is the first mainstream films to tout the HIV/AIDS crisis, putting it front and center. And that was Philadelphia from 1993. A film not just about the impact of that illness, but how every American is deserving of justice when wronged. A great film illustrating the effects of the disease, but also a film that shows the legal system. Next is Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise. And this will start a trilogy, the first being in 1995, that explores time. The film stars Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, and they were influential in essentially rewriting the plot, making the love story of these two people who would meet and that one day and essentially have until sunrise to just kind of fall in love. The next is Clueless from 1995, which takes the basic plot of Jane Austen's story and places it in a 1990s era rich California high school. At first glance, it just seems like a time capsule of that era's MTV-influenced clothing, music, and view of teenage life. But that's just window dressing for director Amy Heckerling's biting social commentary of class and privilege. An early starring role for Paul Rudd. Next, Jim Carrey showed he was more than capable of doing just comedy, but that he was capable of deep drama with The Truman Show from 1998. And this illustrates the influence of media upon the human condition and reflective of the early days of social media, which we all know about now, but it kind of showed the impact of what would happen. The final 5 films come from the 21st century. Frida is a Salma Hayek-led biopic of the artist Frida Kahlo, made in 2002. Also from 2002 is Stephen Daldry's adaptation of the novel Mrs. Dalloway, known as The Hours, starring Nicole Kidman, Julianne Moore, and Meryl Streep, telling a story about depression and creativity. Brad Bird joined Pixar in 2004 for The Incredibles. New techniques by that company showcase their ability to animate more realistic human characters. Prior to that time, that was one of the things that people always kind of said about Pixar, is that the people didn't look quite right. After this film, they looked more and more right. And the film borrowed heavily from 1960s spy films and as well as superhero comic books. The next is a film which can be described as a metaphysical heist film, but that kind of seems like I'm underselling it. The film is Inception from 2010. Christopher Nolan creates a blockbuster that is a meditation on dreams and guilt. Some of the effects in that are just outstanding. The final film is one of Wes Anderson's best. The Grand Budapest Hotel from 2014. Everything that makes a Wes Anderson film, and if you know, you know, is on display in this emotionally resonant motion picture. It is just a delight. Always recommend that one. And that one's another one that's in my collection. So that's this year's National Registry List. As always, the National Film Registry is there to preserve our nation's cinematic heritage for future generations. And this year's 25 entries do that well. A very, very good incoming class. And remember, people, citizens, can nominate their favorite films or films you feel are worthy of inclusion. The next year's class nominations are up until August 15th, 2026. And I'll put a link in the down below stuff for that, as well as a link to the National Registry website, so you can look. They have an interesting, they write essays about the films, and they're really good reads. So do that. And with that, that'll do for another episode of Station Identification. Have a great day.